Hi, it's Stephen at Class Act, and today I'm going to show you how to put together this two-page steampunk scrapbook layout. Okay, the first stage of our layout is to create our background sheets. You're going to need two 12 by 12 pieces of cardstock for this. You're going to need distress spray stain in mustard seed, and you're going to need some gear masks. What these are were actually, I made them. You can buy masks. They're just made out of plastic that you can lay down on things. I made these myself by going to Google Images, printing out the images of gears, and then I put them through my brother's scan and cut, scanned them, cut them out of black cardstock, and then put them through my laminator. Actually, I put the cardstock first through my laminator, then I cut them out with the brother's scan and cut. That just protects them. You don't have to do that step of it. Also, you could probably use dies if you can find a gear die and just cut out a bunch of random gears from black cardstock or any kind of cardstock, and you can use them in the same way as I'm using them here. So what I'm doing is I'm placing them in random spots. I'm not really particular about where they're going, and they're different sizes, as you can see, different formats. And I'm just laying them randomly down across my 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. Not really thinking about this at all. Doesn't matter. They can go wherever. And it doesn't have to be an even placement because this is our first layer, and what we're going to be doing later is adding more layers, so it's going to cover up a lot of these. Okay, so I've got them all laid down here. Now I'm taking my distress spray, again it's in mustard seed, shaking it up well, and make sure you cover your work surface with some scrap paper because this stuff is hard to control. Oops, it'll spray all over the place. So here we go. Just hold it up about maybe 8 inches or so from your surface and just spread it around. Yes, you are going to get little blotches, and that's perfectly all right. You don't have to be very heavy-handed with this. Just light, and that's probably enough. Now, fun part. We want to take these off. So I've got my tweezers here, and we'll just take them and lay them off to the side. I have those type of tweezers that work in reverse, if they work, where you can you squeeze them and they open and then they close themselves. Just taking all these off, and you can see as I remove them, I'm getting these white spots, which is basically the outline of the gears. Now my paper is curling a little bit, and I'm not going to get too worried about that because once I apply some heat to it, it's going to flatten right out. It's just a natural thing that it does because it's wet. And yes, you are going to get some of this on your hands. So I would suggest when doing this that if you don't really want to get stain on your hands, you can use some disposable gloves. But yeah, I don't worry about that. My hands are constantly ink stained, so that's okay. So we've just about got them all off here. And you can see some of the ink has pooled, and that's all right too. That adds to the overall effect. Now, I want to give this a good dry, so I'm going to take my heat gun and just go over it. It doesn't take very long to dry. Now, in these areas where it's kind of blotted up, they take a little longer to dry. So what I do, a little trick here, is just to speed up the drying process. I mean, I could hold my heat gun over this for a while until it eventually dries. But once I've gone over it a little bit with the heat gun, I can simply just take a roll of paper towels, leave them on the roll just like this, and just roll them over top of your surface. And you see that just blots up that excess ink that we sprayed. And then go back with your heat gun and finish drying it. You'll notice too, as I've been drying this, that the paper has been flattening out a little bit. There will be a certain amount of warpage happening. That's okay. That's not going to bother us in the least way. So I just want to make sure that I have this well dried, because the next layer that we're going to put on it needs to have this layer dry. You have to remember that distress ink is water soluble, and because it's water soluble, any liquid medium you put on top of it will reactivate it, and then things are going to start to get a little blurred and messy on your page. Okay, I'm just testing it here to see how dry it is. That was a heavier spot, so give it a little bit more heat. Okay, I think I'm pretty good. All right, the next stage of this, you are going to need your stencil, your gear stencil, and there are several of these on the market. It doesn't matter what you use. This is one I like. And you just toss it down, doesn't matter where, and you're going to use Distress Walnut ink. Get this the right way up. So that's Distress Walnut ink and an ink applicator. I like the round ones. I like them for the use, but if you have the rectangular ones, they'll work fine too, or even a makeup applicator, that will work as well. But these I like the best, and they have the little foam piece and the Velcro that just goes on here. I have one of these for every one of my ink pads, and they each have their own handle, and I label them here walnut ink, and they sit in my rack. So you want to get this really juicy. And then you're just going to pounce the color on it. And you're not being all that careful, because this is another layer. And at first, it's not going to look like you're seeing much on here, because you have the strong base of the mustard seed spray. Sometimes it helps if you go and go around the outside of it as well as the inside of your stencil. Right now what I'm doing is I'm kind of rubbing it in, tapping it and rubbing it. Okay, let's pull this off, see what we got. Okay, I don't know if you're picking that up, but it's very subtle, and that's all we want. And we're going to move it to a new position. This technique for creating a background can be done with any stencil. Since we're doing a steampunk layout, that's why I went with gears, but I've done this background method with butterflies and flowers, and it works very effectively. And it's customizable, because you can take any color that you wish to match your pictures, your theme, and lay it down. I'll put one over here. This is really a technique that art journal people use quite a bit. It's where I learned it, but it works equally well for backgrounds on scrapbooking pages. You can do it for cards too. Okay, how am I coming? That's not bad. I think I'll just put one up here, and let your stencil go off the page as well, because it gives it a good flow. It makes it look like things are happening beyond the page, and that's not a bad thing. Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, so that's our second layer. We're going to carry on with one more layer, and for this we're going to use a rubber stamp and some black soot distress ink. And this particular rubber stamp is one by Deep Red. Their stamps are really nice. But again, there's lots of gear stamps out there that you can buy and use for this. And you're going to do the same thing in this layer. You're going to ink up the stamp. And you're just going to randomly place it, stamp it down. And if your image comes off a little bit faint, it really doesn't matter. See, that one was not a complete one, but that's okay. This is just background that we're creating here. Again, stamp slightly off the page too to give that sense of flow. Another good reason why to have your area protected with some scrap paper, because when you stamp off, you're not getting it on your work surface. And how many? That's up to you. I'm just eyeballing wherever I feel there's a need for an impression. And now I'm just going to stamp off excess over on the edges here and there. Maybe one over here. You notice they're getting fainter, and that's okay. Okay, I think that's good. All right. So the next thing you're going to do then is you're going to take this 12 by 12 sheet and you're going to cut it down to 11.5 by 11.5, and you're going to take a sheet of black cardstock, 12 by 12, and I like to use double-sided tape, and I'm going to put double-sided tape all around the perimeter of the back of this sheet, and then I'm going to center it and adhere it to the black sheet. The reason I do that is because this paper has a tendency to warp because of the spray, it will hold it down flat, and also I like the thickness, the weight of adding another sheet of cardstock. It also creates a border around it. So after you've cut it though, before you stick it down, make sure you go around the edges with your black distress ink. And again, you can use a makeup applicator or a one of these. And I'll just show you on this one. You just go around the edges just to give it a little bit of a distressed look. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. And you're going to do exactly the same thing to the second sheet of 12 by 12 white cardstock. So you have a double page layout, and these will be your background pages. Okay, when I come back, I'm going to show you the next stage in creating your layout. Okay, for the next stage, we're going to deal with the three main pictures that you're going to put on the two-page spread. For this, in the kit, you will find 3 pre-cut black background pieces. These will serve as the shadow piece or the background piece for the pictures. You're also going to find 2 small embossed photo plates and 1 large one. The small ones accommodate a 5 by 7 picture once you've cut it down, and you'll need a 5 by 7 to fit on this properly. And when the pictures are put onto these, and I've already pre-cut my pictures, they will create a border. Now, you'll notice that on both of these, well, 3 of these, they've been embossed. And I used an embossing folder that had gears on it. Doris makes one, I believe it's just called Gears. And I just ran it through my die cutting machine, the embossing folder, and it gave me this nice relief. Now, if you want to bring this out a little bit more, and that's your choice, I did it on brushed corduroy distress paper by Tim Holtz. But you could take your walnut stain, as we have before, get your applicator loaded up with ink, and very lightly just rub over the raised design. Now you can go as dark as you like, it's up to you. It just brings out the embossing, I think, a little bit more. Trying to keep it here on my mat, which is sliding all over the place. And then what you can also do, just to enhance a little bit more, just go around the edges with your ink. And this is just going to make it pop just that much more from the black piece of background. Now again, you can vary how much you put on this. I tend to do it very lightly, but feel free to do it whatever way you want. Do that to all 3 pieces. Now, talking about the pictures themselves. In your kit, you will find a template for this. And all you need to do is put the template down on your 4x6 picture, in this case, and using a black fine tip magic marker, one that'll write on a glossy surface because your pictures are probably glossy. Just outline, using the template, the area of the picture you want to cut out, and just with a pair of scissors, go around and cut it out. That's the easiest way and quickest way to do it. If you are like me and you have a die cutting machine, you could program this into your die cutting machine and run the pictures through it and it'll cut it out as well. But either way, it works fine. Okay, it's a little bit fussy in the cutting because you've got some curves, but if you're slow and careful with it, it'll come out fine. Okay. The same thing with the 5x7. The template in your kit is slightly larger and it's marked as the template, and you just trace around it with your black fine point magic marker and cut it out. Same thing. Now, we want to mount these as well, and before I do that, I just want to very quickly go over the embossed part of the large one. Now, your large one does not fit into your embossing machine. Now, with this being a kit, I've already done the embossing for you, but you have to do a little bit of an overlap. And if you were to look at this very carefully, you would see that there is a line in around this area right here where the two pieces sort of joined, and they don't match up perfectly. But that's not a problem because our picture is going to hide that when we lay it down. So no one's going to see that. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit more ink to this. Oh, there's a little disaster. I just had a piece pull out. Now, that's something. Sometimes that happens. When that happens, that's because the embossing folder kind of cut through the paper. I just flip it over, and I'm going to take a piece of Scotch tape, and I'm just going to line that piece back up on the back side. Put my Scotch tape over it to hold it down. And because I'll be gluing this down anyways, no one's going to see that. There, fixed. Okay, little repair. I just need to do the edges. Again, you can do this with a makeup sponge, or if you're really daring, you can go direct from the ink pad itself. I find that you don't have as much control with that. Oh, there's another piece going too. Okay, note to self. Be very careful with this particular paper. But a little Scotch tape fixed me up. No problem. As I said, no one's going to notice that when I get it glued down with the picture over top it. Okay, I've got that done. Now, I'm going to start with one of the smaller pictures first. Nothing to this at all. You can use your tape runner. You can use glue dots, whatever you like. But the one thing you might want to be careful with a tape runner is because you have a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ridges in here from the embossing and the debossing, it may not stick as well. I prefer to use a quick drying wet glue for this. The one I'm using, the one I like the best actually, is the one we sell in the store, and it's called Designer Dries Clear Adhesive Art Glitter. That's really quite good. Don't let the glitter part fool you. This doesn't have any glitter in it. That's just the name of the company, I believe. So center that so you have a nice black border around it, and then take your picture, and again, you can use your tape runner, your wet glue, whatever you've got will work fine. And center this. And just press that down and let it dry. So you will do the same with the second picture. Glue that down. And this large one is a little special because this also creates a pocket for the tags we're going to be making in the next step. So what I do here is I don't put glue all the way around. I'm going to leave the top open, and I'm going to put my glue around the edges. And you don't want to get too far in because you want to have room for the tag. Okay, so leave the open the part at the top open, flip this over, and the same as you did with the last ones, just center it and press it down. If a little bit of the glue squeezes out the sides, you can just wipe it away with your finger because it's going to dry clear. Okay, so when that's dry, I have a little pocket, which is important for our next step when we do the tags. And then, of course, I'm just going to take my picture, and just as I did before, just put some glue on it and center this. And press it down so it dries. Okay, so I'm going to go off and finish this last picture, and then when I come back, I'm going to show you how to do the next stage in the process. Okay, our next step is to put together the large gear photo wheel. And in your package, you're going to find this large gear. It won't have any pictures in it. We'll talk about putting those in a second. And you're going to need the photo template. It's marked right on it, says photo template, okay? You're also going to need a pair of really good scissors, okay? Now, I just want to do a little aside here. These scissors are excellent. They're the Tim Holtz Tonic scissors. They have a Teflon blade. They're very, very sharp, but it's serrated. So when you're trying to cut a straight line or a curve, it will stay on track, as you'll see, because I'm going to use these scissors to cut out my pictures. The other items you're going to need, of course, are 3 of your 4 by 6 pictures. You're going to need some good glue. I love this glue, the Art Glitter Designer. This dries clear. This holds really well and it dries very quickly. So that's what I'm going to use. Plus it has a precision tip to it, which, as you'll see, will be very handy for what we're going to do next. You're also going to need a fine line marker. I love these Pip ones. They're really good, by Faber-Castell. But any fine line magic marker will work. And you're going to need a white either gel pen or paint pen for this. I'm using Molotow, which I really like these ones as well. We're going to be using this for outlining on the wheel. You also should have a little piece of scrap paper. I'm just going to use a sticky note, and you'll see why I have that handy in a moment. And in your kit, you're going to find a whole bunch of pre-cut gears. Now, for these embellishments, you're going to need 1 large copper, and you're going to need 2 small copper gears, and you're going to need 3 of the small silver gears. And last but not least, you're going to need some gold stickles. All right, so how are we going to do this? Well, let me move a few things out of our way to start with that we're not going to be using immediately. So we have our large gear, and you'll notice there are big holes that represent the sprocket holes. And this is what we're going to put our pictures in, but we need to be able to cut them out. So I've created for you this photo template, which matches up to each one of these holes. However, you will notice the template is slightly bigger than the holes themselves because we need a gluing area. And so you can see on the back, we need a little bit of a border to put the glue on to hold our images into the gear. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm just going to put this over to the side for a moment. And I'm going to take out my last picture. And you're going to use your template over a part of the picture. Obviously, you're not going to get the whole picture in. And you identify the area that you want, and you're going to draw around it. But one word of caution, you will notice that these holes are in different orientations. So you've got to make sure you match the orientation to the hole so you cut out the picture the right way. So you see, if I was to lay this down here on this template, it's not going to fit in that top hole. Okay, I need to turn this one, see the point? I need to turn this upside down. Okay, simple as that. And you would match it up. For example, on this one, the point is going this way, and on this one, the point is going this way. So make sure that when you're cutting out your pictures, that you have the template in the correct orientation for the space you're going to be filling. All right, so I'm going to just put that over to the side, and I'll bring this down. And what I'm going to do, remember I need to put my template this way. I'm lining it up on the section of the picture that I want. And I'm going to take the fine tip magic marker, and I'm just making sure the ink's running, and I'm going to draw right on the picture all the way around using the template. Now you want to make sure you're able to see these lines. So right now mine's, sometimes markers on a glossy surface don't always work. That's why a permanent one's a good idea if you can get one in a very fine tip. Okay, I've done that. And I don't know if you can see that. I'll hold it up a little bit. See, there's my line going right around. And now I'm going to cut that out. Now you want to be fairly accurate, but because we have a little bit of give here, because we have a little bit of a border area, you don't have to be completely exact. So I mean, if you get some of the little black line on your picture, then that's okay. It's going to be hidden. But try to get as close as you possibly can. And this is why these scissors are really good for this, because they're gripping. It's a serrated edge that really lets you cut very precisely and accurately. Okay, there, I've got my picture cut out. Now, I'm going to turn my gear over. And remember, I want to make sure, I'm going to turn this upside down, and I'm going to glue it right here. And I'm just basically eyeballing how close I get it to the edges. You can hold it, flip it over, take a look. Yeah, that's about right. So now I'm going to apply the glue. Now, using this, again, in a scrap piece of paper, I'm just using a sticky note. I'm going to get this the glue started, okay, first of all, just to make sure. I don't want it suddenly to go all over my gear here. And you can choose whether you want to do it as a thin bead all the way around. I prefer just putting dots of glue. You don't need a lot. You'll notice I'm keeping them fairly close to the edge because we have a little bit of allowance here, but we don't have that much. Make sure my orientation is correct. And I'm going to plop that down. Now, you may have a little glue squeeze out on the edges. That's okay because it's going to dry clear. I just use my finger to kind of wipe it up. And I'm going to flip it over. And you might see a little glue on the picture. No, that's not glue. There's a little bit under there. I'm just using my fingernail just to wipe it away. And there we go. And as I said, this glue dries fairly quickly. Okay, so that's how you put your pictures into the large gear. What we're going to do next is we're going to outline the gear with our white paint marker. Sort of give it a stitching effect around it, just as an accent to make this pop out. So with a paint marker, a fine tip paint marker, you want to shake it well. There's a little ball in there, you can hear it mixing. And then on your scrap piece of paper, you need to get it going, started. If you haven't used the paint pen in a while, you plunge it down until the ink is fairly free running. And mine seems to be now too. And now you're just going to go around. I'm going to start with the center circle, and I'm going to go to these pictures because I don't want to get my arm in the paint, because this paint, it is paint. It dries fairly quickly, but not quite as fast as a magic marker. And all I'm doing is I'm just putting little stitch marks, freehand, all the way around. And don't get too uptight if they're different sizes or they're not quite even, because that adds to the distressed look of this whole page. See, I'm going off a little bit there. Certain angles. Oops, got a little thing there. It's not going to kill me. It's not going to hurt. Okay. And we'll go down and do this one. Actually, I kind of like doing this. I find this kind of fun, kind of therapeutic for some reason. I don't know why. And we'll go down to this one. Now, depending on how new your paint marker pen is, you may have to occasionally go back and give it a little shot. And then we're going to do the top parts. Again, same idea. We're just going around. You could do this as, I'm doing this as little lines. You could do it as dots, whatever. I'm using white because it's on a black surface, so that really shows up the best. This is a kind of a cool little embellishment technique you can use on photos that you've matted, whatever, just to give it a little extra pop, especially when you're putting it on something that is one color and is kind of drab. Black's kind of drab. So this is just lightening it up. Now, I could do it along this edge here, but this is going to be on the edge of my layout. So I'm not going to do that because I want to give the illusion that this is actually a full gear, as if it was running off onto the other page. But you could put it down there. It's personal preference. Okay, now as I said, this needs to dry. So be careful with it. It doesn't take that long, but you don't want to smudge it. Okay, while we're waiting for that to dry, I can just get rid of this little piece of scrap paper before I put my hand in it. We're going to get out our gears. Now I said that you need a large copper one, and that's going to go right in here. I'm not going to lay it on there yet because I'm not sure if that's completely dry. And you'll need one small silver one, and it's going to go on top of that gear right there. Then you're going to need two copper gears, and you're just placing them on either side of that middle picture. And you're going to offset a silver gear on top of each one of these. And I kind of put the arm so it blocks the one hole in the copper wheel underneath. It doesn't matter, but there it is. Okay, so how are we going to adhere these? All right, we got this big hole here, right? Now, since I'm making this element separate from the whole page, I want to be careful where I put my glue because I need the glue to hold things. However, if I'd already mounted this onto the page, then no problem because I can put the glue anywhere. But this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get out my fine tip one again, and I'm going to take a little piece of a sticky note pad paper here. Just make sure my glue is running. Yep, there it is. And I'm basically going to stick this. Now, this is going to be a little off center because this is going to be right at your edge of your paper. Okay, so I'm just going to put the glue on the outside rim. And again, I'm just sort of dotting it. With this glue, you don't need a lot. So I just want enough to hold it down. Okay. And then I'm just going to put it right close to the edge. Now you see, if I had this already tacked down to my background page, I could put the glue right in the center, like on these arms, not without a problem. Okay, but since I don't, that's why I put it around the outside edge, because there's nothing in there to hold it. And then I'm going to put this one on top, but I'm going to off-center it. Well, off-center it, I mean the crossbars on it. I'm going to line it up with the hole, but I'm going to put the glue. I'm just going to put the glue right in here around this part. Oops, got a little on the craft sheet, but that doesn't matter. It's a craft sheet, so it'll all come off. wiggle it into place. Now you see I've got some glue that's around. I just use my finger because it dries clear. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Okay, so I've got that gear in place. Now, one thing you'll notice, gears are a little bigger than where I put the little stitch lines. They're peeking out in spots here and there. Not a big problem. I mean, you could forego putting the stitch lines all together if you wish. And now I'm going to adhere these other two pieces. Now I'm using the copper on the bottom to match what I did here, but you could mix it up. It doesn't matter. Again, I'm just putting glue just a little on the arm pieces. You can see I've got a little glue running out there, so I'll just move my finger to take off some of the excess. And then the silver one, same thing, I'm just going to put them on the arms. Hope I'm in shot here. Okay. And I'm going to lay it so it covers the one hole. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter. It's all about what you like. Okay. So there's one set. I'm going to do the same thing with the other set, starting with the small copper gear, and I'm just eyeballing it in here. I've got a lot of glue that time, but as I said, it'll dry clear, so it's not going to kill us. And the silver one. Sorry, I keep going out of shot when I'm gluing. And same thing, just lay it down to cover that. And there. Now, I've got all that together. The last step, and you might want to wait to do this part with the stickles after you've assembled the pages, because the stickles does take a while to dry. But for the sake of illustrating this, I'm going to take the glue. Again, use your stickles. It gets air in here sometimes. So what I like to do is take, again, the scrap piece of paper and just get it going. Make sure, because I have had it come out where it's hit that glue air pocket and it goes splat all over everything. So you've got this center hole right here. So you're just going to put a dab of stickles in there. Just adds a little bling. And we all like a little bling. Now you could use a brad. If you hadn't stuck this down to your page yet, you could put a brad in there if you wished. Now this hole I have a little problem with, because right now I don't have it on my scrapbooking background. So I'm not going to put the stickles on this at this point. I'm going to wait until I get that glued down to my background sheet and then put it on, because otherwise the stickle's just going to go right through the hole and not stick. Okay, so that's how you do the photo gear. When I come back, I'm going to show you how to do the tags. Okay, in this segment, we're going to create the two tags that are going on to the first page of the layout. In your kit, you're going to find two cutouts that look like this. These are the basic backgrounds to the tags. You're going to find two little panels that we're going to be putting onto the tags. You're going to find two top hats that will fit on top of the tags, a couple of little pieces of ribbon, 2 inches long approximately, and a couple of gears, one in silver, one in copper, both the smaller set. The equipment you're going to need for this is your black soot distress ink and an ink applicator. Now, it doesn't have to be distress ink. You could use any kind of black ink for this, and you can use any kind of applicator you're comfortable with. I prefer this kind of applicator. You are going to need your white paint pen again, and you're going to need some, now it's your choice. I'm going to keep using the wet glue, but you could use a tape runner for part of this if you wish. The reason I'm using the white glue is because it gives me a little bit more time to shift pieces around in case I don't get them exactly in the spot where I want them. But as I said, you can use a tape runner if that's what you would prefer. Okay, first thing we want to do is distress the edges of our tags. So we're going to use our black ink and our ink applicator and get it really juicy. And we're just going to go around the edges. And I'm sure you've probably done this before. This is not a new technique by any ways. I do this on a lot of my pages because it gives them a little bit of definition. Acts like a little shadow effect that makes them pop. So you're just going to go all the way around. And you notice I'm not being too particular about how even it is. And I'll do the second tag. Same thing here. And how much you put on is really up to you. It's geared towards your individual taste. Okay, so I've got those two inked. I'm also going to ink these up. Now, you're going to find in your kit that you'll need to do some cutting. I've given you two of these, but you're going to have to cut around them. Again, those scissors that I was talking about in the last segment, the tonic ones by Tim Holtz, excellent for doing this kind of cutting. And once you have them cut out, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to go around and ink the edges for the same reason. It's just going to give it a little bit of depth. And this is a good technique for making things look a little more 3D when you don't want the bulk of an actual 3D element. I know a lot of people don't like to use 3D elements in their scrapbook on their scrapbook pages because they want to keep them flat because they're going into page protectors. Okay, got those done, so we're done with the ink. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put on our little hats, and the little hats fit right in here. Now notice there is a right way and a wrong way. Definitely not going to fit that way. So get the side up here. Oh, there goes my clock. Well, we know what time it is when I'm doing this, don't we? We'll just ignore that. Okay, so I want to put the hat down and leave about an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Again, you're going to eyeball this. And this is where using the wet glue comes in handy. Again, I don't need a lot. I tend to just dot it. Okay. Now flip it over and let's slide it into place. And this is where the wet glue comes in handy. I can move it. If I put tape runner on that, I'm not going to have as much freedom. Okay, that looks good there, and I'm going to do the same thing to the second tag. Again, if you get a little glue on the edges, just use your finger. It'll dry clear. Very forgiving. Okay. And next I'm going to place these tags here, and I'm placing them down close to the bottom in each case. And the idea here is they can act as a frame for a picture, or you can journal on these a little bit right over the top of it. If you've got a dark enough fine tip marker, you can write right across it, no problem. So again, I'm just using the wet glue. This is on these, you could use the tape runner, but since I've got the wet glue out, that's what I'm going to use. And so I'm bringing it close to the bottom, about 1/8 of an inch, and we got about, more like 1/4 of an inch around the outside. And we'll do it to this one. Okay, now we have two little pieces of ribbon. Now there was a couple of ways, oops, my ribbon is now unraveling. This is one of the problems when working with ribbon. Give that a little trim. So I want to use them as a hat band. So because this ribbon that's in your kit, actually it has, you can pick either side, it doesn't really matter. I would use your scissors to straighten off one edge of it. Just take a little off. And it's going to go just about there, but I'm going to have a little excess here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partially glue it down to start with. So I'm going to put some glue about 3/4 of the way up the edge, and I'm putting a little close to the edges so it won't continue to fray. About 3/4 of the way up, because I'll show you why. So I'm going to line this up on my hat. it is. But now you notice that I have got a little overhang here. This is why I didn't put glue all the way, because I'm just going to kind of eyeball it with my scissors. And cut that little piece off. And now I'm just going to take my glue, and this is where the fine point of the glue bottle comes in handy. I can get under there again. Just put a little more glue. And there we go. And I've got a little hair here, and I'm just going to trim that off. Again, the fine point on these scissors is really good for the finer treatment. And I'm going to do the same thing with this other piece. Square off the end, put some glue on it. Oops, oh, everything's falling over here. Okay. And just eyeball where I think I want it. Very good. And then take my scissors and try to do this in one snip this time. There we go. I did. And add some glue underneath. So that's our, what do you call that? A hat band, I guess. And I got a couple of, oops, ooh, that was not good, that I can fix. That's why it's good to have the glue right on the edges, because it's going to keep this ribbon from fraying. Now, if you got a gross grain ribbon or something like that, instead, it won't fray. But I like this ribbon because of the white dots. And speaking of the white dots along it, we're going to just add another little embellishment with our paint pen. Shaking it up. Better put the cap back on my glue though. And where's my sticky notes here? Get my pad of sticky notes because I want to get my ink going. And all I'm going to do, once I get this flowing, is I'm just going to put a little stitch line along the top, just like we did with the large gear. And there we go, a little accent to that. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to tuck a gear into the hat band of each one of these. So I've got a copper small one, as I said, and I've got a small silver. Again, I'm going to use my wet glue for this, and I'm just going to put the wet glue on the arms. Get back in shot here so you can see this. I have a tendency, I'm sorry, to pull it a little bit close to me. Okay. Just going to tuck it under here just a little bit. Got a little excess glue there. I'm just going to use my finger, clean that up a bit. Okay, there's one. And this is the other one, same thing. Just tuck it under a little bit. Okay, again, got a little bit of excess glue, but it's going to dry clear. Okay, I keep saying that. It's going to dry clear. Trust me, it's going to dry clear. Okay, last touch. Gotta go get it. Take your gold stickles if you want. Now you could use a brad as well. If you're going to use a brad though, I would put this, before you attach the hat part down to the tag, I would put the brad through with the gear here, and so you won't see it on the other side. But I'm going to use stickles. Just a little bead of stickles in the center, just again to add a little bling. Now that's going to have to dry for a while, so I'm going to set that aside. And when I come back, I'm going to show you what to do with some of the other embellishments. Okay, now we're going to work on the two large embellishments, and that's the Lady Cyclist in the steampunk design and the steampunky gear hat. And we're going to do something kind of neat with this to add a little bit of aged look to both of these. You're also going, so both of these are in your kit, and you're also going to need more gears. And so you've got a large copper gear, you've got a medium-sized dark gray gear, and you've got a small copper gear. And then you're going to need a small copper gear and a small dark gray gear as well. You're also going to need your walnut stain ink, put it the right way up, an ink applicator, your choice. Now, if you don't have walnut stain, you can just use a regular brown ink pad for this. And you need a Wink of Stella clear pen as well. This is very important to this process. And one other thing you're going to want is a little piece, a little square of wax paper. And I'll explain what you're going to do with that in a second. You're also going to want your gold stickles, again, to add a little bit of bling to this. And yeah, I think that's everything. So the first thing you're going to do, and I've already done it on the Lady Cyclist, but I'm going to finish it up on the hat, is you're simply going to use your walnut stain, get your ink applicator really juicy, and you're going to go around the edges. And you can get a little, there's a bit of a whitish, off-white border all the way around these pieces. So don't be afraid to put a little bit more on in those areas. It just makes it stand out that much more when we mount it to the pages, and it makes it look like it's been sitting around and weathered and aged. Okay, so once we've done that, and we do that on both pieces, then you'll notice on this piece I have a little bit of color. I hope it's showing up in the video. But in here, this is just a black and white printout, but there's brown. Some of the walnut stain look is in her skirt, in her wings, and the feathers in her hat. Again, it just makes it look a little bit older and more aged. How do we do that? Well, there's different methods you could use. You could use pencil crayons. You could use a watercolor pen with brown in it or something like that. But here's a little trick we're going to try. We're going to do it on the hat to illustrate this. This is where your wax paper comes in. So you take your walnut stain ink pad directly from the pad, and you're going to tap it. And do it a lot. You want to build up a few layers of this ink. And depending on how juicy your pad is, will depend on how much you get on this ink. Now, this, though, is distress ink. And so you need a water-soluble ink in order for this method to work. And distress ink is probably the best one for this. You could try it with a dye ink and see what happens. I'm not sure. But I'm using the Distress Walnut Stain ink. Now I've got it all over my wax paper. You're going to take your Wink of Stella, the clear Wink of Stella. And you see, the principle behind these is simply that they're in a water brush themselves. When moisture hits distress ink, it activates it. So we have our moisture is in this shape of the Wink of Stella. However, we're going to use it to color in some of the feathers to give them an aged look. So we're going to generously load it up with ink. You can see what's happening here because this is wet. And then you're going to paint. And you don't have to be too exact. You will have to go back and forth quite a bit, but you see what's happening? Don't know if it's showing up on the video, but we're getting not only a little color, but we're getting some shimmer at the same time. Now, the reason I'm using a clear Wink of Stella for this is that the clear does not change the color at all. The only color we're applying is the brown walnut stain. If we were to use a white one, for example, it would become very milky. So that's why the clear Wink of Stella works the best. And we're just going around to all the areas that we have a little bit of whiteness to. Now, these were printed on off-white cardstock, and I did that on purpose to already start the aging process. But you can see what's going on here. Now, sometimes you have to give your Wink of Stella a little squeeze to get more moisture into it. And you can put as much on and as little on as you wish. Now, the reason I put it on the wax paper instead of going right directly to the pad itself is because we don't want the shimmery parts of the Wink of Stella mixing in with our ink pad. You could also put this right onto a non-stick craft sheet if you wish. It'll bead up the same. but I'm using it on a piece of wax paper just for easier cleanup. Although it's pretty easy to clean it up when you use something like Tim Holtz craft mat. You just take a baby wipe to it. Now, you may start to run out of the pigment, of the ink. So if that's the case, just do a little re-inking. Now, I told you before you don't want to transfer the Wink of Stella to this. So I'm looking at this. There's really not too much Wink of Stella there, but I'm just going to go down on a part of my wax paper that I hadn't used before. And give this a little bit more of a squirt. And you see, it's subtle, but it looks like it's been aged. So I'm just going to finish up here in a couple of spots. Now I did the same with her skirt and her wings, as I said, and her hat feathers. And in some of these smaller pieces, because it's on black, I'm not being all that exact, but I am getting a little shimmer here. Now, what you can do is, if you want more shimmer, is let that dry or hit it with a heat gun, and then go in with just the Wink of Stella itself. Now you'll notice the Wink of Stella is discolored. Well, easy way to fix it, baby wipe. Because the Wink of Stella is kind of water soluble itself, you can just run that brush tip through a moist baby wipe. You have to work at it a little bit, and that'll take the color right out. You give it a little pressure, a little squirt. You see, I've got most of that out. And you can just take another piece of scrap paper and just fill it up. My Wink of Stella, I'm going to have to order some more, is getting a little, I think I may be running dry. But anyways, so you see, I haven't wrecked my Wink of Stella. Okay, so once you've got the two pieces colorized, we're going to add some gears to it. So we'll start with the Lady Cyclist first. And as I said, you will find in your kit a large copper sprocket or gear, a medium-sized dark gray as opposed to the silver sprocket, and a small copper one as well. And we're just going to take our wet glue, and again, I'm going to squeeze it out here to make sure I don't get huge blobs. There we go. And you're going to place these over top of her bicycle wheel. And it can hang over the edges a little bit. In fact, the outside rim of the wheel actually acts as a guide. So you're going to put on some glue, back into shot. And lay that down. And then I'm going to lay on top of that the dark gray gear. And I'm going to offset the little spokes on it. Excess glue, just use your finger. And then the small copper. I'm out of shot, aren't I? Yes, I am. That's okay. Here we go. And again, offset it a little from there too. And once again, just to give it a little bling, gold stickles. Again, make sure there's no air trapped in it. Good. And right in the center. Again, this could be a brad. Okay, set that aside to dry. And then take the hat, and we're just going to add two gears to this. So one small copper and one small dark gray. And really, placement's up to you where you want to put these. Since there's already a little clock and a sprocket drawn on here, I'm going to use those as my guides. I'm going to put the copper one here over top of the larger sprocket. And my medium dark gray is going to go over top of the clock. And I'm sort of overlapping them. Again, gives it a little bit of dimension. Got a little glue there. Don't worry about it. It will dry clear. And just a dab of gold stickles in the center holes. Okay, so those two embellishment pieces are done. When I come back, we're going to focus our attention on the title pieces. Okay, the last stage is the total assembly of the package. So what we have is our title pieces, which you'll find Days of Future Past. Days of goes on that page, and Future Past go on this page. Now, it's up to you how you want to really assemble this. So I am not going to glue the pieces down. I'm just going to lay them out roughly so you can get an idea of what your final product might look like. With the Days of, you want to put a background of sprockets, and that background is going to consist of a large copper sprocket, a medium size silver sprocket, medium size dark gray sprocket, another medium size copper gear, and a small silver gear. Now you can lay these out any way you wish. And then on top of this, once you have those glued down, on top of this you're going to put the two words, Days of. Now, if you want to make this pop, you could raise the Days of up on pop dots, or in fact you could glue this all together as one piece and then raise the whole assembled form up as one piece. Over on this side, we have our hat, our embellished hat. And down below, we have our large picture. Now remember, the large picture has a pocket in it, and that's where one of our tags will go. Just slides in right like that. And you can have as much of it peeking out as you wish. And on this side, we put the other tag. Move them around so you get the spacing the way you like it. Remember, I'm not gluing this down, so this is just kind of rough placement at the moment. And then the last piece of embellishment, the lady cyclist. And this, you could pop up again with pop dots. You can pop any of this up with pop dots. And she goes off to the side. On the second page, down the bottom, we have Days of Future Past, the continuation of the phrase. And for this, we have some more sprockets. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, and I'm going to lay out a large copper, or that's a medium-sized copper, I believe. Yeah, medium-sized copper, medium-sized dark gray, a dark gray sprocket, and then a small copper gear and a small silver gear. And again, you can lay these out any way you wish, and the words are going to go right on top. And again, the same thing, if you want to pop it up with pop dots, you can do that. And you don't have to have them all in a straight line either. One can be higher than the other, whichever way suits you. And then we just add our photos. And I'll find our photos here. Oh, yes, forgot. First of all, before we put in the photos, we're going to put the large gear. And you can butt that right up to the edge, or you can leave a little bit of space if you wish. And you'll have to play around with your placement of your words, of course. It's always a good idea to lay it all out before you glue it down. And then our two pictures. Again, you have to probably adjust your words, but when you have everything the way you want it, then you can glue it all down. Okay? So there you go. That's the finished product. So I hope you enjoyed this layout, and I hope to see you again in another class for a future layout. Bye for now.